Good morning. This is Avraham Shira for Nahar Shalom and the Chabura. As we come close to Shabbat, it's always good to stop for a minute, open up a holy sefer of Rebbe Nachman. We are in Torah Tinyana, the second Torah, the fifth paragraph. And today we're going to speak about the holiness of Shabbat, the joy of Shabbat, and the sadness of the weekdays. And what this really means, the sadness of the weekdays, we'll get into as we go. The Rebbe begins in paragraph 5, Shlemut dibur hu b'chinat lashon hakodesh. The complete speech is an aspect of lashon hakodesh, which we call Hebrew. Now these are two concepts that we have to explore each on their own to really grasp and understand. In a nutshell, we could say that Shlemut dibur, we've been taught, is that when a person's speech is in prayer, in Torah, and in making shidduchim. Interestingly, making matches between two people is part of the aspect of complete speech. Now we understand that speech is a powerful tool, but when we use the tool of speech for prayer, for learning, and for helping bring together people, then we're causing a coalescence of our powers of speech. Now the coalescence of powers of speech also includes that my heart and my mind and my body are all one in the act of talking. Now, of course, Lashon HaKodesh, in the simple sense, is Hebrew. But Lashon HaKodesh also means the content of one's speech has to also be holy. So through these two ideas, we're going to approach the joy of Shabbos. Now it's fascinating where the Rebbe takes this. He begins, Ki kol lashonot ha'amim em chaserim ve'en lehem shlemut. All the languages in the world are lacking something. Rak lashon hakodesh hu mekushar l'Shabbat, and only lashon hakodesh is complete because it's attached to Shabbat, the idea of the day of rest. But why would the day of rest be the element that makes Hebrew holier, more complete than all the other hundreds of languages that there are in the world? This is an aspect of daber davar, which we say in the Kiddush, Shelo yeh diborcha shel Shabbat kediborcha shel chol, as the rabbis say, that our speech on Shabbat should not be the same type of speech that we have during the week. This is an aspect of kol devarchu. So too you will bless. So you see, there's also a connection to blessing, that if our speech is whole and complete, then we are given the power of blessing. B'lashon HaKodesh, sheb'shalashon HaKodesh nichla beracha u'kedusha, because in the holy language are included blessing and holiness. Remember, holiness is something that's set aside, that it's special. And so Hebrew itself is something that we set aside, this language versus all the other languages that we can speak. Ki lashon HaKodesh mekushar l'Shabbat, because the holy tongue is attached to Shabbat. Shneimar bo bracha kedusha. In Shabbat we know we speak about the blessing and the holiness. And so those concepts also apply to Shabbat and to Hebrew. And of course we're talking about the Hebrew that doesn't contain slang or doesn't contain the impure words of impure ideas. And this is why we say on Shabbat, v'yivarech v'kadesh, we will bless and we will make holy. So that itself is an interesting idea. If you want to make something holy, you set it aside. This is my Shabbos suit. This is my Shabbos pair of shoes. That means I set those aside for just on Shabbat. But the Rebbe says we bless and then we sanctify. So the first thing I have to do is thank and bless God. Thank you for a Shabbos suit. Thank you for special clothing for Shabbat and special dishes, special candles, special tablecloth, everything that we set aside for Shabbat. We bless on that and set it aside and make it holy. And since the holy language is attached to Shabbat, and therefore through the holiness, the completeness of speech, so by all of this happening together on Shabbat, we were drawing the simcha of Shabbat into the 6 days of the week. In other words, there's this, think of Shabbat as like this reservoir of joy. And I want that joy to come from my Shabbat into the weekdays. We want to attach all of it together. I don't want to be sad on Sunday, and I don't want to be sad on Tuesday, right? So I can always connect back to this joy of Shabbat during the week, draw a little bit of that joy of Shabbat into the weekday, and you have a different life, a different week altogether. Because the weekdays are an aspect of sadness. Why is that? And even the mitzvot, the acts of goodness that we do during the week, contain this little bit of sadness. Now, why is that? Well, the Rebbe begins very high up in the Olamot, in the spiritual realm. Keep Memtet, which is a notricon, a Rosh Tevot, the first letters of the name of the angel. We try not to say the names of angels out loud because they don't like to be bothered by human beings. Just like human beings don't like to be bothered by human beings. But this angel, we don't say his name out loud. He is in charge, Shaltanuta b'yamei hachol. He's in charge of the weekdays, meaning he is the conduit of divine light that comes into the physical realm. Now that's a whole long teaching. We can find it in the Zohar, in the Tikkuni Zohar. Especially there's whole chapters that deal with this idea of who is this angel, when he came into being, and his influence over the human race, and the whole world for that matter. Now this Memtet angel, as we call him, Hu Bechinat Evid, he's a servant. Now, I don't know about all of you, but being a servant has, as the Rebbe says, Bechinat Atzvut, a little bit of sadness. We might love our masters, we might love our bosses, we might love the people that we have to serve. But there's still a little bit of sadness in there, this lack of freedom. That somebody else can tell you what to do, it's not exactly makes us happy. Aval Shabbat hu bechinat ben. But Shabbat is the aspect of a son. When you are the son of the king, you roam the palace and do it you want to do more or less. Whereas when you're a servant, you can't just do what you want to do anytime. Maybe when you sleep, you're allowed to, sleep. But the son, he's an aspect of freedom and of joy. Then it is pleasant for the upper realm and the lower realm. That means the human race and the spiritual beings in the upper worlds. Now, it's a very interesting idea that when we're free here, we cause freedom above. And we cause joy above. V'nitorer simcha. And joy is aroused. And then we are able to be elevated, and to all the mitzvot of the weekdays are elevated on Shabbat. So, we try to do mitzvot all week long, but they're not always happy, and they're not always focused, and they're not always with our complete heart and soul. But once Shabbat comes in, and that opening happens, which is happening right now, because it's Friday afternoon here in Israel, that opening allows, so to speak, the weekday mitzvot to rise up to Shabbat. And by Friday night, Shabbat evening, then everything that we've done during the week is drawn up into the joy of Shabbat. And then even on the weekday mitzvot, there's drawn upon them this quality of rest and joy. This is an aspect of when Noah, the famous architect and captain of the ship, of the ark, when he was born, his father said, this son will comfort us from the hard work of the weekdays and from the sadness in our hands. Well, that's an interesting idea also. Why does Noah's father connect Noah being the source of comfort, which of course he was, he saved the world, but it's Tzavon Yadeinu. What does it mean, the sadness of our hands? Well, anybody who's worked with their hands extensively, like a builder or even a craftsman, knows that our hands are the expressions of our mind and hearts into the physical realm. That when you pick up two pieces of wood and attach them together, that could be a happy moment or it could be an unhappy moment. Depends on how you approach your work. So there's this sadness in work, I think, is what it's really touching on. Hayinu b'chinat Shabbat, shehi b'chinat ben. And so Noah is going to bring down this aspect of sun, this aspect of Shabbat, from the higher in the world into the weekdays. And so too there will also be pleasantness and rest in the upper and the lower realms. Because, of course, the Shabbat is supposed to comfort us. It's supposed to fill us with joy on all the sadness that we might have incurred during the week. And this is what Noah's father said. He will comfort us. Now it's interesting, Noah's father, why would he say, my son's going to comfort us? What did he know? He didn't know that his son was going to build an ark 600 years later. I assume that he didn't. Maybe he did. But we're not told that he did. So there was something happening in the generation of Noah and his father that made him say, we need comfort. This world is uncomfortable. This world pushes, the real comfort zone's in heaven. And this world is not exactly a comfort zone. So, but Noah's father, because when people are attached to Hashem and they have love in their heart, they automatically will speak words that they don't even know what they're saying and that are from God. And so something intuitive in Noah's father said, this boy is going to comfort us, which of course he did. And when we merit to this level of the holy tongue, remember, the elevated speech, the speech that deals with the important things of life, which really are prayer and Torah, and bringing people together. Shehu mekushar l'Shabbat, which is attached to Shabbat, as we've learned. Azay mamshichim al yado et kedusha v'simcha shel Shabbat l'sheishet yemei ha'chol. Then we are able, through the holy tongue and these concepts, to draw down that joy and comfort and rest during the weekdays. Now, these are very high ideas for sure, and they might seem far away from us. But if you look at it really, if you stop at any point during the week for 1 second in the minute of your work, and you think about Shabbat and the rest of Shabbat, rest being the comfort, the ease, the relaxation, the relief of not having my cell phone on and my television on and my stereo on and my car running and all the other things we got going during the week. If you stop for just a moment and remember that there's a time of rest coming, that's going to draw it down a little bit into that moment. And really, we can make the weekday an aspect of Shabbat. Because the holy tongue is attached to Shabbat, l'sheish yemei ha'chol. Again, this idea that we draw down through the holiness and the joy of Shabbat into the weekdays, then because of the holy tongue, we are attached to Shabbat. So it's, again, the idea that a language can attach us to a higher state. The language itself is a fascinating idea. Of course, when you think about high ideas and you speak high ideas with your friends, with your spouses, you're going to receive something from that speech. But the language of Hebrew carries it within itself. Because remember, the whole world is being created by the speech of God every moment. And that speech of God we identify with what the Zohar calls the primordial tongue, the primordial language with which God creates speech, which are the Koach Atvan de Maseh Bereshit, the 28 letters of the original statements of creation. Those 28 letters are constantly being said. This is an important idea to understand about Hebrew. When God says something, it's constantly being said. It doesn't just go away in the thin air like when we're speaking, the words go away in the thin air. But they actually don't, because we believe that there's somebody listening and somebody who cares, our Father in heaven. But nonetheless, most of the time we relate to speech as being, sound in air that goes away when we stop talking. But not so when God speaks. It's a continuous reverberation of that speech throughout creation, throughout time and space. And that's why we say on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem Devarcha Nitzav B'Shamayim, on Rosh Hashanah. God, your word is standing in heaven. Standing in heaven means his speech doesn't go anywhere. It's continuously translating the infinite into the finite through these holy letters. And therefore, Nimshach Ayidei Simcha Shel Shabbat L'Sheish Yemei Chol, and therefore, the Lashon HaKodesh, Shlemut HaDibur, all of these concepts translate into bringing Shabbat joy into the weekdays. V'zeu El Elokim Hashem Diber, 3 names of God in one phrase, which is unique in Torah. El is the name of kindness, Elokim is the name of judgment, and Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is the name of mercy, which is the balance between these 2 other names, which represent, of course, the 3 Sfirot and are embodied in the soul through the right arm, the left arm, and the torso being the heart. And interestingly enough, if we take the gematria of this phrase, El Elokim Havaya, and the Rebbe adds Ima Tevot, and we add the numbers of the Tevot, all the numbers of those letters add up with the number values of the letters, the gematriot, i.e., this is Mispar Simcha. That how do we get Simcha is through balancing these 2 powers of kindness and judgment, and bringing them together into Havaya, into creation, and this spells out joy. Again, that balance between the forces in our soul translates into joy. If you want to feel real joy, ask yourself how balanced you feel, how centered you feel, because that's the channel of the joy. That when we achieve, God willing, someday soon, and it can happen for a moment and then it can leave you, depends on what we do and what we say. But as long as we're constantly coming back to Hashem and we're still knocking on the door of the palace, Hashem's going to open the door. Eventually, He always does. If we keep knocking and we keep asking and we keep speaking to come close to Hashem, then we're going to come close to this balance in the middle of the tree of life, which is, of course, inside us. And this is activated, this is accessed through these ideas of Shlemut HaDibur, whole complete speech, and Lashon HaKodesh, the Hebrew tongue. Now, sorry to say, most of the world doesn't speak Hebrew. And I remember the day that I first went to yeshiva and I couldn't speak Hebrew. And I left the class feeling pretty bad because I maybe understood 1% of what the rabbi was saying. But I went outside to the parking lot and I started praying to Hashem that I would get a little Hebrew here so I could understand what's going on. You know, you're in downtown Jerusalem, you want to know what's going on. You feel like a 2-year-old instead of a 30-year-old, and you can't understand, you know, what it means to go to, how do you buy a box of apples in the market if you don't know how to ask for it in Hebrew? Okay, that's a moment of humility that comes with coming to Eretz Israel. But once we get some Hebrew, we start like growing up fast inside. We suddenly start feeling grounded, connected to something higher than what English or French or Spanish or any other language can give to us. And it doesn't matter if you're 2 or you're 20 or you're 40 or you're 80. You could still begin learning Hebrew. And even if you don't know what the words mean, it's still good to read them. Because as we read them over and over, we're going to start to receive from them. And the more we know, the more we'll receive. So if you say Shabbat, you know what the word Shabbat means. It's a time and space where we rest. Okay. But let's say histaklut. Histaklut means to gaze upon something. Now, I don't know what the word histaklut means, let's say. But if I look inside the word, I see there's a sin, a kaf, and a lamed. These 3 letters spell out the word seichel, intellect. So then we understand that histaklut is an aspect of the intelligence. It's gazing with intelligence. So if I take every new word that I learn in Hebrew and go down to its shoresh, find the root meaning of the word, I'll come back to the whole word and understand more of what the word is trying to tell me. And so on and so forth. With each word that we learn, we're adding to our shlemut hadibur, our lashon hakodesh. And that automatically gives you the channel to the upper joy and to the access to this level of the speech of creation. And of course, remember, we are here to become our higher selves. We are here to access the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God in which we were originally created. Now, many of us have fallen from the image of God to, places we don't want to talk about, but nonetheless, that level does exist inside us. That is our higher soul, and that's what we're here to connect, and that's also connected to the Holy Shabbat. So I want to bless ourselves that Hashem should help us achieve this complete speech, achieve the understanding, the access and the attachment to the Hebrew, the Holy Tongue, and of course, the Holy Shabbat, which is coming near us soon. And we've got to get down to the kitchen and start cooking. So I want to invite all of you to be with us. Next week, we're going to continue with our learning and preparing for Shabbat and these holy words of Rabbi Nachman and the sages of the Gemara. And you can look for some of our classes on our YouTube channel. And we are going to be bringing more information and more ideas, meditations, prayers, poems, all kinds of things are going to be coming out as we learn how to use these amazing platforms that God has provided for us to reach out to each other and connect. So God bless all of you and have a great Shabbat. See you next week.